Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Dima Svetov and I want to create those videos to complement some of my blog posts. And I'm sure in the future this channel will expand to other types of videos. But for now I want to use it towards complementing some of the blog posts that I post on Medium. And today I want to talk about the over architecture uh, blog post that I made. If you haven't seen it before, the link will be below. Please take a look at it, read through it. Love to start a conversation, see your guys' response on it, and see what other people feel about the current state of engineering in the world and where we're heading with this. So with that, I want to start by talking a little bit about myself to give some context in terms of where I'm coming from, uh, where my mindset when I wrote this blog post. And I started off my career by making kids games and for web, for mobile, then led some projects. I was a lead, and then became engineering manager, and now leading a team of 9 engineers across different platforms, responsible for multiple projects. Um, and the key learning that I have is when we start a project is understanding the scope. The scope is one of the most important thing. I totally understand that there will be big projects with humongous scope that will require really deep understanding and architecture to be able to support the features that are already in scope defined. But I wanted to just say that in my experience, those projects are very rare and come by once in a blue moon. Compared to the other smaller projects that you probably guys involved on a daily basis, either you're doing it for yourself or you're doing working for a company, and those projects are the ones that I want to focus on. Those are the projects that people tend to over architect because they specifically thinking about the scope that doesn't yet exist. A client comes in and asks you for to create a website, and you immediately start thinking, well, it's probably going to have a chat, but the client didn't say it was going to have a chat. But you creating your architecture to accommodate that, even though you don't know it's going to have a chat or not. This is the type of architecture I'm talking about. It's the one that you creating a framework for yourself to look for the future onto the features that don't exist or potentially will never exist for this project. This will create an issue for you in term to complete the project on scope because you spend so much time thinking about things that potentially not going to even make it there. Yes, when they do decide to add a feature like the chat, it might be easier to add. But chances are, let's say a year later, the client comes back and says, I do want to put a chat now in the system. What will happen is you look back at that architecture and be like, well, this is out of date now. There is a new, better approaches. The chat systems changed. Now we need to have stickers in there and emojis and other things that chat now has. And my architecture doesn't support it anyways. So you're gonna rewrite it anyways in that scenario. So this is type of over architecture I'm talking about is specifically kind of talking about the scope, talking about a lot of especially senior developers that I find they start overthinking and creating in their mind a scope that doesn't exist on paper. It's not in the requirements. Yes, it might be easier later on, but if that requirement never comes in, then you're putting a lot of work right now that doesn't necessarily translate to later on. So this is type of the kind of requirement that you're putting on yourself in the beginning of the project, and you might go over time. A lot of people I see working extra over time just so that the architecture is perfect, and other people will come in and say like, "Oh my God, this is such a good architecture." But what happens is actually opposite. If a new person gets added to the project, meet through the current project, what they'll see is a lot of classes that don't really do anything, and you just have to create this huge inheritance chain just because you want to add something small, and that creates a more headache than it actually solves. So until you have a build robust architecture, it and project, that architecture doesn't actually help it. It slows down the process. So as my advice, as something that I was basically trying to convey through the blog post, is uh, target your architecture um, to the project, because what happens at the end of the day, if you have a one-off project that will never be updated, or you things like it's never gonna need anything extra that will require that can be added, because a lot of times if you have to add something, you might have to re-architect it anyways, because now the requirements change so drastically that the current system doesn't support, or the OS came out with a new system that now you have to adhere to. So as an example, iOS or Android, the constantly OS upgrades itself. At some point, you just might have to change your architecture because you're still using MVP and Google suggests to use MVVM, for example. So even in those scenarios, a few years pass and you're going to be like, you know what, we just better rewrite most of it because the new requirements don't fit into what we currently have as architecture. So in those scenarios, there's no reason to over architect. And if you're never going to go back to that code, just like I mentioned at the end of my blog, the lessons will, like, nobody will care about your practice or about your architecture if nobody reuses it. If you're never going to reuse something from the old code, why did you spend so much time and so much effort into it? Nobody will, literally nobody will remember. That's what you wanted to accomplish, and you're not going to get the kudos you think you're going to get for the architecture that you created. Now, there is definitely an appropriate time and place to create good architecture, clean architectures, the ones that support bigger projects, and those projects do exist. Uh, I don't believe that those projects disappear. There will be always a big projects. There's companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook that do have huge amounts of big projects that require a very sophisticated architecture. And yes, they know that it will take them longer to do something in the beginning, just so it's easier to do something in the end. But that's because they know the scope right off the bat. But for small project that probably 99% of us practice our coding in, that will not be a scenario. So I encourage you guys to step back and think, do I need this feature or not? Do I need to use this feature or not? And then go from there. A lot of those architectures, they make it easy, especially like architectures like MVC, MVP, MVVM, the others that exist, clean architecture, they exist to solve some problems. And if you don't understand the problem that you are solving, what are you solving? And that's what I want to encourage you, is to understand the problem that you are solving. And hopefully that complements some of the blog posts, clarifies some of my kind of writing, and kind of gives you a perspective of where I'm coming from. And I really hope to hear from you guys to kind of create a conversation out of this, and we'll be glad to chat with you guys. Thanks a lot.